Hi there. Great to see you thriving bees. We are on week 1 of our yoga mini teacher training for enthusiastic new and seasoned yoga teacher. Our mission is simple. We aim to empower yoga teacherpreneurs to build, launch, and thrive in their yoga businesses. Yesterday, we explored the intricate world of air anatomy, delving into the magic of scapular retraction and protraction. But today is all about SURYogA Wednesday. Ready to take actions? Here is your roadmap. Step number 1, download under the free resources section at teacherpreneurs.com your free copy of the outstanding guide to yoga sequencing. Step number 2, stay sharp because everything we learn this week will come alive in the Monday quiz. Don't forget. So amici, grab your notepads or download the PDF and take notes. Let's embark on another educational day together. This module is part of Dharma Academy Business and Yoga with Purpose program. We will quickly overview it, not delving into details, but I'm sure it's a valuable tool to plan your yoga class. All right, the outstanding guide to yoga sequencing. This module is part of Dharma Academy Business and Yoga with Purpose program. We will give it a quick overview without delving too deeply into the details, but I promise you to be a valuable resource to plan your yoga sequence. Moving on, what will you learn today? What is a yoga sequence? Why is sequencing a yoga class important? What are the 2 main outcomes of a yoga sequence? What's important to know when you build a sequence? A few important elements to consider, a few tips to take into consideration when building a yoga sequence, and then from phase 1 to phase 14, different elements that you could implement in your yoga sequence. All right, what's a yoga sequence? Let's start from the foundation. A yoga sequencing is the art of arranging yoga poses in different ways, but in a continuous order, linking them together to create a balanced and flowing experience and to achieve a nourishing outcome. A well-designed yoga sequence typically includes a warm-up, a middle one, middle two, and a cool down. The warm-up normally consists of a gentle movements to prepare the body for more challenging poses, with stretch, with forward bends, lubricates joint in every direction, open hips, strengthen arms and core. In the middle one, normally also called standing sequence, we concentrate, we create focus. Middle two sequence, a combination of inversion, back bends, and arm balancing, and a cool down, the last part of the class where we open the hips, where we do a lot of back bends, twist, and forward bends. Why do we want to structure a yoga sequence? Sequencing a yoga class is extremely important for several reasons. Safety first, always, balance, including postures that works different muscle groups and systems such as the nervous system and the respiratory system can help to balance the mind and the body. The intention, very, very important when you come into a class. Flow and harmonize. Sequencing can create a logical and smooth flow of postures where you warm up, open, mobilize, strength, stretch, and cool down the body in the direction of final relaxation, which is Shavasana. This can also help create a sense of unity, harmony, mindfulness, and relaxation throughout the class. Also moving toward advanced asanas and help the body and mind heal and stay healthy. Moving on, what are the 2 main outcomes of the yoga sequence? The student should feel better from the moment your students step into their mat, into the yoga class. They should begin to feel complete, heal, transform, and it should have that sort of beneficial aspect to it. The student should have a complete experience. What does it mean having a complete experience? Well, having, for example, a theme of the class, the intention of the class, so a good mixture in between flexibility, range of motion, strength, mindful movements. All right. What's important to consider when you build a yoga sequence? Small or big groups. When you have a large group, maybe you want to keep it simple. When you have a small niche group that you know that it's advanced, intermediate, or beginner, that's another class as well. Different people, elderly, teenager, pregnant, postnatal women, kids as well. Injuries, very important to understand injuries of your yoga students. Different levels of practitioners, I mentioned beginners, intermediate, advanced, and all that jazz. Morning or evening yoga classes. Well, very important to know for the asanas that you want to implement in your class. For example, middle two, normally inversions in the morning are not very beneficial for the body. Maybe if it's an evening class, you want to implement more inversions. So you kind of like help your student to cool down their body with more inversions. The moon cycle also super important. Phase number 1, start with the peak pose. Whenever we assemble a sequence, it's good to build the yoga class around the peak pose. The peak pose is the pinnacle of the class, and so the whole class from the warm up to cool down is designed around it. The key question when you sequence toward the peak pose are mainly four. The first one, what is going to be the peak pose? Simple. What part of the body do we need to stretch, mobilize, and strengthen to move toward the peak pose? What part of the body of movement do we need to educate? And how do we want to create a sense of balance and harmony within the body after the peak pose? What sort of contra posing or unwinding poses the body requires? Phase number 2, choose your theme of the class. It could be a variety of things. It could be like a body parts or an anatomy focus, or it could be more a philosophical aspect like the yamas and yamas, the Bhagavad Gita, the sutra, or even like an intention, a sankalpa, or bandhas, emotions, mudra. Whatever it is, choose a theme of your class. Phase number 3, choose the duration, the target group, and the yoga level. The duration, very important. If it's a 90 minutes long, or in most of the studios nowadays, because we're living in a fast-paced world, it's 60 or 75 minutes. Important to know as well as you build the structure of your class. Yoga level, beginner, intermediate, advanced, as we mentioned before. Target group, who are they? Elderly, teenager, pregnant, postnatal, and blah, blah, blah. Phase number 4, choose the yoga style. Of course, the yoga style is related to your yoga teacher training. You can't improvise a Kundalini yoga class if you haven't done a training in Kundalini. Phase number 5, choose the type of flow. All right, so we got two main type of flows. The ladder flow or progressive flow. You add complexity to your sequence. You pick 4 to 5 poses in each warm-up, middle 1, middle 2, and cool down. You repeat the same base and you add or take away some asana to add a more complex variation to the last asana sequence. Let me explain. So, for example, if we have a sequence that goes like plank, side plank, wild thing, from wild thing to warrior one, from warrior one to humble warrior, and then you come back from humble warrior, you go back to plank, side plank, wild thing, warrior one. From warrior one, you add up. Or you can, from wild thing, you can move it away and move side plank, warrior one, humble warrior, from humble warrior, standing split, from standing split to warrior 3. Of course, whenever you add up, you can repeat the sequence of the 4 and 5 asana you choose, or you can just continue with the flow. So you adding up slowly and then you come back, or you don't come back. Static flow. Static flow comes with the more traditional style of yoga like Hatha or Puna yoga, but also Yin and any slow pace type of yoga. You hold each pose and you move to the next one. You have minimal transitions or almost none. You experience one pose at a time. But as we know in Hatha yoga, we have a warm-up sequence which is called sun salutation. That's where you have a lot of transition and movement in a flow sequence. Otherwise, it's like middle 1, middle 2, you go to one pose, you move to the next one. Phase number 6, introduction of yourself and housekeeping. Super important. The presentation is also part of how do you want to present yourself. Not only important when you step into a yoga studio, but also like when you create a business online. How do you want to be seen? Playful, uplifting, intellectual, supportive, funny, like whatever it is. Choose maybe 3 or 4 qualities that you want to traits that you want to have in your teaching style. Then give your presentation of yoga. It's so important to offer your journey with yoga, your interpretation of yoga. It doesn't have to be something complicated, just something simple that people can relate to. Housekeeping for a yoga studio, where they can find, for example, emergency exit, where they can find the toilets if they have any emergency, or where they can find water, props, and all that jazz. Housekeeping online. I love to, even if I teach online, I love to create a safe environment for them, even if they're not there with me. For example, saying like, move the bottles of water, move the glass of water away from the yoga mats, make sure you have enough space around the yoga mat to move freely. Or for example, like I created a Spotify playlist for this practice. You can go ahead and grab it on this link. Or props needed if they have it, of course, and give variation. Like if they don't have blocks, you can always say take 2 shoe boxes or something like that. Phase number 7, introduction of the class, the breath explanation, the explanation of the class. For example, the theme, the intention of the class, the length of the class, the style of the class, so they know what to expect. And the breath to use during the class. For example, I love to say something like in Warrior 1, when we move upward and backward, it's normally an inhale. When we move forward, it's an exhale. Something easy. Phase number 8, understand your student. 3 super important aspects. 1, adjustment permission. You need to ask your student if they want to be touched. Ask about injuries to modify and give variation during the class. And ask if anyone is new to yoga. Phase number 9, set up your temple. Pick up a meditation style or a meditation pose. Pick up your pranayama pose and a pranayama technique, Dharma talk, or chanting. Of course, in this phase, if you have 60 minutes, it's squeezed in 5. If you have 75, it's 6 minutes. 90 minutes, it's 8 to 10. Phase number 10, warm up. Normally, the timing for a 60 minutes class, the warm up will be like 15 minutes, which is normally 6 asana. Then for 75 minutes is 18 minutes for a warm up, and normally it's 8 asanas. And then 90 minutes class, which is 20 minutes warm up, it's 10 asanas. I know it sounds a lot, but it's actually not. This sequence is the most important part of the sequence itself for different reasons. Increase the blood flow and the muscle temperature, which is a good preparation for the body. And then a joint lubrication, a mental preparation, so you mentally prepare what's happening next. and then injury prevention and improve the range of motion. Most of the asanas in the warm-up are meant to core strength, stretch with forward bend, open with back bends and hip opening, mobilize especially the spine with torso side bends and twists, which is super important to do that because the spine is such a long part of our body. Then the sun salutation also is part of the warm-up, and normally you should include it in the warm-up. It's a good mixture in between a lot of different things. So sun salutation, of course, is part of the warm-up. Phase number 11, middle one. The middle one normally is 12 minutes for a 60 minutes class, 16 minutes for a 75 minutes class, and it's normally like 6 to 7 asanas, and then 20 minutes for 90 minutes class, and it's normally 8 asanas. Middle one is the right combination between standing poses and grounding and balancing poses, and it creates a sense of concentration and focus. The difference in between standing and balancing, well, standing, you're standing on 2 feet, and then balancing, you normally stand on 1 foot. Phase number 12. Well, the timing in the middle two sequence for 60 minutes class is 12 minutes, which is normally 3 to 4 asanas. A 75 minutes class is 15 minutes, which is normally 4 to 5 asanas. 90 minutes class is 20 minutes. Sounds a lot, but it's actually not. 5 to 6 asanas. Because also, like, you have to consider the time to let them in, like the explanation to get them in the asanas, the time to let them out, to guide them out of the asanas, and maybe you want to contrapose that asanas as well. The middle tune is a mild mix in between the arm balancing, back bends, and inversion. Normally, it's very different for, as we mentioned before, morning to evening. Morning, normally you should keep 2 inversions, really, and in the evening you can increase the inversions. And so of course, like if you have a beginner class with middle 2, you don't want to go too advanced and do like shoulder stands or handstand or even like headstand. You just want to do preparation to reach that pose. Phase number 13, cool down. In the final part of the class, you want to come back to the original intention of the class, to close up a beautiful cycle. Guide them into a small talk, which is related to the Dharma talk at the beginning of the class, or simply guide them to breath awareness. In the cooling down sequence, most of the asana are seated, which is the great invitation to calm the body. Phase 14, Shavasana and conclusion. Shavasana is a crucial part of the yoga sequence. And normally you should consider to give a good amount, just because, we live in a very stressful environment nowadays. So Shavasana is a great way to let go and absorb whatever is being done. And of course, it's a great way to digest the asana by creating an integration of everything that has been done. Consider 6 minutes up to 10, 60 minutes to 90 minutes class. All right, now it's time to put everything into practice and plan your first yoga class with the yoga class templates. Here you find all the slides with all the different tables to fill out for you to create your first yoga class. I hope this is a valuable resource in your yoga teacherpreneurship journey. If you want to master your yoga sequence, don't forget to download the outstanding guide to yoga sequences under the free resource on my website, faemarianne.com. Join me tomorrow for Philosophy Thursday, where we'll dive into the fascinating world of yoga philosophy, lifestyle, and ethics. Ciao for now. See you on the moon.